You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
It's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks, and a very special episode as we focus on some of the stars of the Acolyte. On this episode, we get the chance to chat to Jack Parker, who's the performer for PIP, Amy Tsang, who played Ensign Rane, one of the Brendok witches in episode 3 Destiny, and Danielle Waterman, who was a youngling in the very opening episode Lost Found. Let's start off with Jack, and we have the chance to discuss PIP, his way to the role, and much, much more on a very special episode of Making Tracks. We're talking to Jack Parker. Jack has got a hand, more than a hand, in operating PIP in the Acolyte. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Just want to talk to you a little bit about your experience, because it's catching a lot of people's attention. It's a brand new era of Star Wars. It feels very, very different to a lot of things we've seen before. But of course, it's completely familiar because there's lightsabers and spaceships and the Force and all the cool stuff that we love. What has your experience been like diving into this galaxy for the first time?
It's been a dream come true, really. I've been a fan of Star Wars since I was a tiny boy, a little boy. And to kind of step into that world and be part of it and create a character in that universe, it's a dream come true, really. What
was your entry point to Star Wars? What was it that grabbed you as a kid?
I was always into the design of Star Wars. It was the ships, it was the stormtroopers, the blasters, it was all of that stuff that really hooked me. But particularly the spaceships, because I was space mad as a kid. But also there's that sort of rebellion feel to it, the underdog winning, which always sort of appealed to me.
So when this opportunity came along, or how did this opportunity come along? I mean, where did this chance to be part of this brand new era of Star Wars come to you?
Well, I was very fortunate, really, because I'd never done Star Wars before, and actually this is my first animatronic job as well.
Right.
But I've done puppetry and film for more than a decade. And I got a call from Derek Arnold saying, will you come in, have a sort of meeting with us and see where you might kind of fit in? And then ended up auditioning for this part PIP. Had a lovely meeting with Amandla where we sort of had a lot of fun, a lot of joking around, and ended up, on my journey to a galaxy far, far away.
That you mentioned Amandla, that little clip came out a couple of weeks ago now, and it really stood out because she's there with the whole cast around her. And she's talking specifically about yourself. One, that must have been kind of a very cool little thrill and a lovely tip of the hat to the work that you did. But what was the process for making Osha and PIP work so well together? Because you and Amandla have got to be on the same page.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So we had this kind of first meeting where we just sort of got to know each other. We introduced the characters together, and they just played and had fun. But a big part, and I think Amandla says this in the interview, a big part of what I wanted to create, we were playing this really amazing world where the set designers and the costume designers and all of that created these amazing sets and this whole world that we got to play in.
Yeah.
Super believable world that we got to play in. And I wanted to be a part of that, really. I wanted PIP to live as much as possible, not to come on, do his bit and leave. I wanted PIP to be this character that Amandla had with her that was alive and playful the whole time. So I spent a lot of my time just mucking around, really, between takes. We'd get serious and we'd do the take, but in between, it kind of ended up feeling like this. I always felt like Osha was Pip's sort of annoying big sister, really. In takes, she'd be taking him out and flicking his nose and turning him upside down and just sort of generally sort of just mucking around with him, which was great for me because I loved performing PIP. I didn't want to stop doing it. So being able to just kind of play with him between takes was great fun.
It does feel like they've been together for a good long while, that they're work colleagues almost. It's like the line from Thor Ragnarok, isn't it? Oh, we know each other from work. There's that lovely little unity there. But I also like the fact that in Star Wars, going back to the early days, everyone was, all the characters were like, oh, at 3PO, and R2 was kind of lovable, but he was there as to do a purpose. And when you get more to the more recent eras, in Force Awakens, for example, Ray's fiddling around with BB-8's antenna, and there's a tactile, Poe's giving him a hug and he's rubbing his belly like a puppy. It does feel like there's more of a connection now between the human character, the sentient characters, and the droids. It's a nice unity. Does it feel like that's something that you've continued with Pip and Osha specifically?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely something that was my aim, really, was to kind of create a character that, because I think the thing with pip droids is they are fantastically useful, and it's something, it's a tool we all wish we had. It's a iPhone on steroids, isn't it? Does everything. It's an amazing tool. But also, they genuinely have a relationship, and I think Osha relies on Pip, to keep her happy and sane, and also to be a sort of sounding board for her ideas, and also I think he's not afraid to tell her when she's wrong, to go, hang on a minute, you're not concentrating here, think about it this way. Yeah, so it's a sort of best friend and best tool in the world combination.
That's a great point, because we don't know much about her life as a mechanic, but it does feel kind of a bit isolated and traveling from ship to ship. And the sense is she's working for the Trade Federation. That's how it feels. But she's bobbed along from project to project. And I guess for a long time, Pip is her only companion, isn't he?
Well, exactly, yeah. And I think that there's a huge backstory with all of that stuff about their life on the ship. And it is, like you say, it's very isolated and it's very dangerous. And it's definitely not a job you'd want to do, but there's a sort of blitz spirit between the two of them. They've been through a lot together, and they sort of know that together they can do anything, really.
So when you're on set, you've worked out the relationship with Amandla and the characters. What was life like on the set for you as performing a character that is literally sort of yay high?
Oh, well, it was great. We had a brilliant team. So on set every day there was 4 of us. There was Nick Tyrrell, who designed him. Yeah. There was Josh Lee, who did all the absolutely incredible inner workings of Pip, and there was Matt Denton, who did all the amazing software design that kind of made him do all the things he did. So we would hang out together a lot, and we're surrounded by all our Pip droids, and and then we'd get the call, we'd go in and do our scene. But he was very popular on set. As you can imagine, Pip was loved by the cast and crew, and so everyone wanted to pick him up and play with him and interact with him.
When you're performing, as you say, I'm picturing you with the pad, watching the screen, sort of getting a sense of the geography of the moment. But how collaborative is it in the sense, is it literally just yourself? They've whittled it down to it's just the operator, it's just Jack doing the bits, or are there other people involved as well?
No, so this droid was, one person operated, for the entirety of the shoot. But there's a huge amount of kind of outside work that goes into it as well. He had his entourage of people who, tickling up his paint work, making sure that all the software was working, that all the servos were working as they should, and then obviously switching in and out between the different pips that we had on set for different gags that we had in the scenes. But in the end of the day, when it came down to when they said action, it was Pip and Osha, and that was it.
When you're performing, we spoke earlier, you mentioned you'd done Warhorse and other projects. And so on Warhorse, you were the head of the horse, and then there's a whole, presumably guys behind you doing the rest of the body. So you're working as a unit, as a team. It's got to have that spinal flow, hasn't it, to all make sense. When you are with a cloth puppet, that's a different performance as well, or a marionette, any kind of puppetry, you're giving life to it. How tricky was it finding that for Pip, or conversely, how easy was it to find it for Pip? Where did you sit with that?
So this was my first experience of animatronics, but I used to build and fly FPV racing drones years ago when it was all analog, and sort of had to build them yourself and then you'd crash them into trees and have to put them back together again. So weirdly, I have spent a lot of time using the specific controller that controls Pip, because I have the same one. So weirdly, it felt very intuitive to pick him up. But with some puppets, it does take a long time to work out, to kind of key into the character and work out how to operate them. But with Pip, I really felt from day one picking him up, I felt like I could tune into his character immediately. And I think that's a real testament to the design and all the work that had gone into creating him as a puppet. But yeah, I keyed into him really quickly. And I think something to do with the design, he's got this innocence, but also this bravery. And I always thought of Pip as quite fierce but innocent. I found very quickly that the controlling of him on the sticks kind of melted away. And I was able to just kind of put my actor's brain into his brain and play the character without having anything in the way of that,
It feels quite sturdy. I think for years we didn't know until Force Awakens how tough the Falcon was. When you see it literally crash land on a planet and bounce, and it's basically fine. These things are built to last. And it does feel like Pip is quite tough. I know in real life, if you dropped him, that would be a different story. But in Star Wars, if you dropped him, just pick him up. He has got that sturdiness about him, hasn't he?
I think that's why I think that's what really drew me to Star Wars as a kid as well, was the fact that everything is just it's all very mechanical and it's tough. And, it's not Star Trek where everything's sort of sleek and shiny and clean. It's dirty and feels like they've grabbed a bit from this and stuck it on there. And this thing's broken, so they've just sort of patched it up with a bit of, welded it up a bit. And I always love that. But yeah, Pip definitely feels like a tough little. You'd want him to be tough, if you're hanging off the outside of a ship, you definitely need something that's not going to break.
Big takeaway from your experience. What will you take away from making your episodes on season 1 of The Acolyte?
I mean, it really was a dream come true to be part of that world. It's a world that I've sort of inhabited in my imagination since I was a little boy. And to kind of step into the real sets and the real world and see all the characters, in a weird way, felt like I was stepping into my own imagination. And I think that's because, I've worked on a lot of movies over the years, and there's a lot of blue screen. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors, which is all part of the fun of movie making. It's a big smoke and mirrors game. But stepping onto Star Wars, I was just really taken aback by how little of that there was. There's barely a blue screen in the whole season. So you're walking around these amazing sets, amazing environments, and there's robots driving around. There's aliens. It's real. It's all happening for real. And the kind of level of detail and level of kind of artistry that went into creating those worlds that we then got to play in was incredible.
Well, we're loving it. We're really enjoying it. I know we're only halfway through the season right now, but there's so much more to come, and it's been a blast. Thanks so much for giving us your time.
Thank you very much.
I'm Brian Herring, BB-8 puppeteer, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. That'll learn you.
Next, we catch up with Amy Tsang. Amy played Ensign Rane, one of the Brendok witches, in Destiny, the 3rd episode of season 1 of The Acolyte. So here's myself and Amy talking all about her Star Wars journey and her role in that episode. So welcome to Fantha Tracks. We're very much looking forward to talking to you. You were seen in a very recent episode of The Acolyte, but we're not going to go straight into that. We're going to start talking about all the other cool stuff you've done. So for people who aren't aware of you before, obviously, last week's episode of the show, give us a little sense of what you've done in the past. What sort of shows have you been involved with in the past?
Right. So I started my career in Hong Kong. So I was signed to the only TV studio in Hong Kong, TVB. And so I did, I have over 80 credits in television over in Hong Kong. And that was about 10 years ago before I moved to US. So when I first came to US, I kind of had to start over. Nobody knew who I was over here. And so I did Silent River, which is an indie film that I was the lead in, a co-lead in, and that's on Amazon Prime US.
Yeah.
Oh, it's actually in UK right now too. And also I've been on shows like Kung Fu on CW, Grey's Anatomy, SWAT, like a couple of those shows as guest starring.
So you've been very busy. You've done lots of stuff in the past, loads, a very full CV.
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky to get some work in the past few years since it's been hard, with the strike and all over here. So
yeah. What precipitated the move? You were clearly very successful in Hong Kong. Did you just want to broaden your horizons? Was it a new challenge? What was the reason for making that move?
Well, I was starting to get limited in my roles over there, and I never acted in English. And since I am American, and the goal was always to come to LA, I just made the jump, without thinking too much about it.
It's worked out pretty well so far then.
Yeah,
So, Star Wars, obviously, Panther Tracks, Star Wars news site. So we're all about the Star Wars. You can probably tell from my shirt, it's all Star Wars every day. So we saw Destiny last week. We know you're in 2 episodes. I'm not going to touch on the second one, but the first episode came out last week. Very different for Star Wars, very unique, very interesting, loads of lore to dig into. It's an era that's new to a lot of us out here in the fandom, which is inherently interesting anyway. How did that role come to your door?
So it was really interesting. I had done Silent River, which is the film I told you about just now. And I became friends with the exec producer of the show, one of the exec producers, Jeff King. And he watched the movie. And somehow when he was reading the script, he thought of me for that role that I eventually got. And so he's like, do you want to audition for it? And I'm like, of course. And so, yeah, I sent in a tape, gave it my best shot. And, I heard 3 months later that I got the role.
You mentioned, obviously, the writer's strike last year, and we've had all sorts, obviously, in the last couple of 3 years, we've had all sorts of things that have slowed Hollywood down, slowed the world down, to be honest. How did that impact on the filming of it, or the casting, as you mentioned? Obviously, I think it's probably quite natural to wait a few months for a role to come through. But how did that impact on the production for you?
So you're talking about when I received the news for
yeah.
So how it impacted me? Well, I was just doing what all other actors do. Just kept on self-taping for other roles. And so I kind of did it and forgot about it. I didn't really, hope on it because I just thought Star Wars is such a huge thing. Never in my world did I think that I would get a Star Wars role. So I was pretty relaxed about it. I just went about doing my normal actor stuff.
You mentioned self-taping. I hear this a lot lately. I interviewed an UK actor called John Thompson, who was in a show over here called The Fast Show, a comedy show. And he said when he would go for roles, face-to-face roles, he got 57 out of 58 roles. He nailed it and he got it. When he started self-taping, he found it a completely different and a very new process. And his hit ratio wasn't so successful. I'm just curious. I'm not an actor, so I don't really know the process. Self-taping, how does that work? I mean, do you feel a connection to it? Is it a shot in the dark? How does that work?
I've always had a lot of anxiety going into the room, and having that 1 or 2 shots to get it right. So self-taping has kind of been great for me, it is logistically, there's stuff that, I've had to work out, like getting a reader to read with me. And, normally it's better to have an actor read with you. So not like my sister or something, which, she tries, but it's always a little bit like, I don't know, like she's just reading off the paper. So, I feel comfortable with self-taping just because I get to creatively create what I want to be presented and have control over that. So for me, it's great,
That's interesting. I didn't know the process, so that's interesting to hear a flip side of that, because it does seem more of a common thing. When you got your option, your chance to pitch for this, to put your self-tape in, I'm assuming that it didn't say, and in the Star Wars ship, the character walks in and yada, yada, yada. It was very much obscured and you couldn't really tell what it was. Or did you know that it was Star Wars that you were going for?
Oh, I definitely knew it had a code name. My reps didn't know when it came in. So it was very interesting. I knew because, I was prepared for that, but it was dummy sides. There was no script attached. It was just, I just had to gauge from what was written in the sides.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
You've got the part. That's part one done. And then presumably you go in and you see the costume, you start to see the paraphernalia around it, you realise, you already know, but you realise, wow, I'm now going to be a part of the Star Wars galaxy. And in something that's, as we said before, it's a fresh new era. So you and your fellow co-workers and production are laying new ground for Star Wars, which is always interesting. How involved, how interested was that? Because to see all of this for the first time must have been fantastic.
I mean, it was incredible. You only see, like, I grew up with Star Wars. Like, my best friends were like huge Star Wars fans, and they would always like talk about it. And, so I would watch a lot, in the theater and on TV. And I'm always like amazed by how beautiful everything is and just how vast the world is. So when I'm like in person seeing all this, I was just taken aback. I mean, the costuming. So it started to feel real when I was doing fittings and trying on the costumes, and everything was tailor-made, very specific to the characters. And the details of everything, which just made me have a tactile sense of the character. And being on the sets, like everything was just so specific, so detailed. And because they were not CG, everything you pretty much see on screen is what it was like in person. So I was just looking at everything, feeling everything. And I was like, I don't even have to act, in some way. It's just there, I'm just playing pretend.
Some actors like a tactile, you mentioned tactile, it's a great word. Some actors like something to hook onto. It might be a costume or it might be a prop. What is it for you that sort of connects you to your character?
Oh, it's definitely costumes. Like what you wear, it reveals so much about who you are inside. And, I do like to work from inside out, but also in this case, outside in, like just the artistic aspect of everything, it really, really helped. And yeah, like I mentioned, the sets were just incredible, like just being there. And also the feeling of everyone around me, like all the other actors, like just looking incredible and amazing. Jodie Turner-Smith, like as a queen. I don't even have to imagine her as a queen. She is a queen. So like all those things combined really, really help. Mm-hmm.
What was the atmosphere like on set? Because as we say, it is this new era. So if you were going into something that was set before, like Andor, for example, before the original Star Wars film, or The Mandalorian, which is so well set sort of further out into the timeline, you're in this totally brand new era. There must have been a great excitement on set. You had Kogonada was your director, so a new director to Star Wars, again, bringing his own flair to it. So and presumably Leslie was around and all the other crew were sort of involved in there. What atmosphere was going on? Was it nervous? Was it tense? Was it loose? Was it excited? Where was everybody's sort of mindset?
Oh my goodness. Before even stepping on set, finding out that Kogonada was the director was just a dream, because I watched his stuff. I was a big fan before. I loved After Yang. And so I was a little like, okay, I wonder what he's going to be like. He ran it, like, my feeling on it was like an indie film set where
Right.
he wasn't sitting high above and not around. He asked you what you thought about the character and discussed with you during, before, after takes. And it felt, in a sense, very indie. So there wasn't pressure, like, because everything's so huge and
Yeah.
there's all these things going on, like the cranes are moving, like the camera's zooming in your face. And I just felt, under his direction, very at ease. And Leslie was so down to earth. She came on the first day, my first day on the set. She came to introduce herself and thank me for being there. It was just, and we had like a little conversation about how I was liking London and stuff. And it was just wonderful. It just felt very warm from the beginning. So when I walked on set, it was just very comfortable. Yeah.
And you mentioned, obviously, it was filmed here in the UK. So what was that experience like for you coming over here and filming it on it? Because obviously an American set is different to a Hong Kong set. It's different to a UK set. How was that?
I love UK. I love London. Yeah. I just had the best experience. I was there for a little over 3 months.
Wow.
And yeah, it was just, from fittings to makeup to like camera tests to the rehearsals and then being on set. It was just like I never had anything like it, and it's like what we actors strive for, to be at that, in this place where you're with the best people and everyone's so professional, but also at the same time so friendly. I mean everyone, like the PAs come and knock on your door and everyone's so polite. They're like, oh, like I'm just like, I've never been welcome to set. Like, it's a little different in America. They're just like, okay, it's time for you to come on set. But then in this experience, someone knocks on my door at my trailer and they're like, excuse me, Miss Tsang, we would like to welcome you to set. Are you ready? Like very polite, it was the best. Yeah.
Do you enjoy that? I mean, obviously you've traveled obviously with work and that, are there places you'd like to work film set wise, location wise? Is there a place that you'd specifically, I'd love to film in Venice, I'd love to film in Moscow, wherever it might be?
I mean, London was one of the places on my list that it's just, I didn't think that would be Star Wars. You know what I mean? I'm always like that. I'm telling you, Mark, it never crossed my mind that would happen. Yeah.
That's very cool. That's very cool. When you were on set, and there are lots of integral scenes in that, especially in terms of the story with the twins and everything that happens around it with the characters in that location. Was there a moment when you really thought, wow, because it's so different, I think it's beautiful. It feels almost more Star Wars because it's different, because Star Wars is supposed to be this crazy, big, diverse sort of goulash of everything into the pot sort of stuff. But that's the ethos of Star Wars at its core. You look at the cantina in the original film with all the different kinds of creatures all drinking at the bar together. That's Star Wars. So this is just another sort of spice or another vegetable or a bit of meat into that big, that big melting pot, if you like. Was there a moment when you just thought, wow, this is just amazing?
We started with the ascension ceremony. Like that was our first scene that we had to shoot. And so we rehearsed that. It was my first time having a movement coach on set, and beforehand coaching us on very specific details on how the witches should move, and specifically how I should move.
Yeah.
And so the moment I stepped on set with everyone in their costumes, like the whole group of witches is all together chanting, it just, and then because we were out in the open, and there was a full moon above, and just like, it was so magical just to see everything. It just felt real, like so real. Yeah. So I think that was a moment that I was like, wow, this is incredible, like just amazing.
It must be so cool to be, especially an actor, to really be, I mean, you've got to be in the moment to be an actor. So I get that, but really in Star Wars, because there's so many peripheral things that get layered on afterwards, or may get added, or there's not distractions, but the creature shop have done all their work, and there's different things around. It must be so cool to just almost lose yourself in the scene and feel like you're really there, especially in something like science fiction, like Star Wars.
Absolutely. Every single person that was there was so passionate about their job. And it was so cool to see how everybody just loved being there, and wanted to do their best, give themselves their best selves. And I really think it really started from Leslie Headland being a really great, compassionate, collaborative human being, leader.
Yeah. She's so impressive. The things she's in relation to Star Wars specifically, the things she's spoken about really goes to the core of all the things you kind of want a Star Wars show to be about. And so, and she's clearly, she's made it very clear. She's a long-time fan, so she understands the sort of the nuts and bolts, and she's a storyteller, as you say, so she gets those mechanics in a way that somebody like me is almost as a consumer, if you like, or I write for a magazine, so I'm writing about what's happened after you guys have done all your work. So it's a different perspective on Star Wars, but it's fascinating that she's so sort of on it in that sense. When the episode came out, what was the reaction from your family and friends?
I had a small watch party with my closest friends. They really wanted to be there in the moment with me. They were so excited, so just in awe of what they saw on screen. And then my little goddaughter watched it, and she calls me Aunt Mimi. She's like, "Can Aunt Mimi teach me how to be a witch?" So it was so precious to have that kind of, you think, you're just in a thing and it's huge, but those small impactful moments mean so much to me. Yeah. Coming from my little goddaughter who has someone to look up to, on screen.
That's so cool. There's a great history of witches in Star Wars storytelling, going way, 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 way back to the 80s and through the Clone Wars, the animated stuff, and Ahsoka quite recently, and now, of course, in Acolyte. So you're now part of the Star Wars family. So you're stuck with me and all the others. So are you hoping at some point, we know you're in another episode, that's out there already, but are you hoping at some point to get to conventions, be able to do that side of things, start to meet the fans and talk to folks? Are you looking forward to that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if given the opportunity, I mean, I'm a new fan, and I've been to San Diego Comic-Con, so the energy of that really is something else. So being in person to talk to fans directly and hearing their excitement over characters and all that, I mean, I'd love to be a part of it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we've loved having you on here. It's been fascinating talking to you. Hopefully we'll see. I've never been to San Diego, so hopefully I'll meet you at San Diego or somewhere in between.
Yes. It's it's a lot.
That's what everybody tells me. I've done New York. I've never done San Diego, so it's a bucket list thing. I need to do it.
Oh, wow. I haven't done New York. Yeah.
We've got to do New York.
Hi, this is Dorian Kinji, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Finally, for this episode, we catch up with Danielle Waterman. Danielle was one of the younglings at the very start of the first episode, Lost Found. So here's myself and Danielle in her very first podcast interview, talking all about her own experiences and first steps in the Star Wars galaxy. So, Danielle, welcome to Fantha Tracks. How are you?
I'm very good today, thank you.
You should be very good, because I saw the first episode of The Acolyte recently. You are in it. It's a big deal. So how do you feel about being a Star Wars star then?
I feel amazing. Much better than I thought it would be.
Yeah? So what's been so cool about it?
It's been cool because my dad has made everyone in my family like jumpers and t-shirts with me on it.
So when you were, obviously you filmed it a little while ago. How old are you now, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 9 and I
You're
filmed
9.
7.
Okay, so you were 7 when you made it. What do you remember from making your episode of The Acolyte?
I remember that I loved going for the fittings, trying on the outfits and getting them altered to the right size, being in a big hangar full of costumes and the designers as well as their props.
Okay, so when you went to get your clothes worked out, did they know exactly what you were going to wear, or did you have any choices?
They knew exactly what I was going to wear.
Wow. So you must have been just the perfect actress to play that role then.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So when you were on the set, obviously there's yourself and there's JJ, who's Master Sol, and you've got all the other actors around you. How many people were in the room?
Quite a few. At least 3.
That's a good number of people. And when you were filming, what could you see? Was there a set there, or was it a special screen? How was it done?
It was like a set, and then there were a bunch of seats on the floor, and I had to like change seats, I think. So I was like, that one. Wait, no, that one. And we stuck with that one.
And when you go in and sit down and you prepare to do your scene, do you rehearse it with all the actors a few times before you shoot it?
Yes, I can't really remember that well.
You're quite rare. A lot of people are in Star Wars and they don't have any lines. In fact, some people are really famous in Star Wars and you never even hear their voice. It's done by somebody else. But you, it's definitely you. So how soon did you know that you actually had a line in The Acolyte?
Like after the self-tape, and then maybe like 2 days later. How about?
Were you excited to have a line?
Yes, very.
And what was your reaction then when you saw the trailer? Because it was quite a long time after you made it to when the trailer came out, and now the episode's out very, very soon. What were your reactions when you saw yourself in the trailer? I bet you couldn't believe it. And when we saw you at Leicester at the National Space Centre, was that the first time you've ever gone out into the world at a Star Wars event knowing that you're part of Star Wars?
Yes.
Because we were really excited when we heard it was you. Everybody was talking. It was like, wow, that's the girl out of the Acolyte trailer. It was really cool. So did you get the excitement? Did you get the energy?
Yes. I also got a bunch of pictures with everyone. Outside, there's like this red person. I don't know if it was a she or he. I couldn't see the face. And they were so still. They looked like a statue.
There's lots of silly people in Star Wars. So now you've been in this episode of The Acolyte. Would you like to be in Star Wars again? And if you were, would you like to be the same character or would you like to be somebody different?
Yes, I would definitely like to be in Star Wars again. There is a character that I'd like to be. I'd like to be like a more main character because who doesn't like the attention?
Well, you've got loads of attention. This has been really cool. You're the first person from The Acolyte that we've spoke to properly on Fantha Tracks. So we're very excited. We've spoke to some of the people on roundtables. So I'm very excited. So where will we see you next? Are you going to any other events? Will we see you again soon?
We might be going to a Comic-Con in, London. I'll probably be in my Star Wars outfit.
I hope so, because you look really cool. So we'll have to make sure we see you there and say hello.
Well, that's been brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Is this your first interview?
Yes.
Let me tell you something. The actress that plays Princess Leia in Obi-Wan Kenobi, I spoke to her when she was 10, so a year older than you, and that was her first podcast. I think we've done our first interview with a superstar, so we're really excited. We're looking forward to seeing all the cool things that you do.
Thank you.
Visit fanthatracks.com or be sure to comment, like and share on our social media feeds at Fanthatracks. Send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Temple for composing the Fanthatracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings, 9 o'clock UK, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook, YouTube and Twitch. And check out our Fanthatracks Radio Friday night rotation every Friday at 7 o'clock UK time for new episodes of The Phantom from Down Under, Planet Leia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Cannon Fodder, and special episodes of Making Tracks, and every Tuesday at 7 o'clock UK time for your weekly episode of Making Tracks. And remember, Fanthatracks.com, our social media feeds, Fanthatracks TV and Fanthatracks Radio are absolutely so no Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, Kickstarter or Indiegogo required to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
Coming up next on Fanthatracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.